Today we are going to hear from Jonas Rosland, Kaitlyn Barnard, and Jenny Burcio. Stories from the Trenches, Building and Engaging Open Source Communities. Communities are critical to healthy open source projects. In this session, we will share details about our community ambassador programs, Docker captains, CNCF ambassadors, and code catalysts.
Welcome. Thank you.
You can hold this. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the session here. Again, sorry for the cold room. For those that joined us a little later, we do have swag for everyone that moves up here in the front. So please come up and grab your free swag. We also got another giveaway that we're going to do at the end of the talk. So I have 3 books here, 3 copies of the Open Organization Guide to IT Culture Change. So this is going to be for the 3 first questions during the Q&A. So stick around for the Q&A and you can get your own free book here. This is the Stories from the Trenches, Building and Engaging Open Source Communities. My name is Jonas Rosland. I've been an open source community manager and developer advocate for the past 3.5 years. On my free time, I love playing retro games and blowing up spaceships in Kerbal Space Program.
Hi, my name is Jenny Burcio. I manage the Docker Captains program in addition to a few other things at Docker. For those of you over there, you might not be able to see that I am very pregnant, and so this is my last activity before shutting it down. So I'm very happy to be here with y'all. And if I lose my breath, please stick with me through my portion.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. I'm Kaitlyn Barnard. I work for the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. I typically work from home, so I'm really excited to be presenting in front of real live people. Most of my time is spent with my dog, who I call my coworker. So I'm a very intense husky mom, and I play a lot of flag football and ski in my spare time. So I'm going to kick us off here. So like I said, I work for the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. I'm an integrated marketer. So basically, I work on a lot of cross-channel marketing programs to drive awareness and adoption of cloud native technologies. So this focuses a lot around developer outreach and community building. So one of these programs that I help manage is the CNCF Ambassador program. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, we're a nonprofit foundation under the Linux Foundation, and we manage these different open source cloud native technologies such as Kubernetes, Prometheus, OpenTracing, and about 13 others right now. There's a brief description of the Cloud Native Ambassador program up here. So basically, Cloud Native Ambassadors are individuals who are passionate about cloud native computing technology, the projects that are under our umbrella, and they're recognized for their expertise and willingness to help others in the community around these technologies and these frameworks. So successful ambassadors, like I said, are already people that are engaged with our projects, contributing code, writing blog posts, presenting at conferences, running meetups, stuff like that. So we are about 50 ambassadors over 14 countries right now. And here's just a little snapshot of our ambassadors. So I want to start at the beginning with the goals that we keep in mind when designing a program like this. And I think these goals are really consistent across a lot of community and ambassador programs. So the first is, the first goal of our program is to promote cloud native projects and technology. So we want these people to be active advocates of our technology. The second is to educate a local community on the CNCF mission. So as I mentioned, a lot of these ambassadors are already running meetups in their local communities and speaking and presenting this type of content to them. And so they're really active community resources. And then the third is they contribute to CNCF projects. Like I said, these individuals are contributing code. They have experience using these technologies in the application that they're building, and they're actively sharing that information to assist others who are embarking on that journey as well. Oh, am I not close enough? All right. So, those kind of in general are fairly broad goals, right? So how do you turn that into actually building a community? So the first thing I start with is reach out to the all-stars that already exist in your community. So I hear a lot of companies say, hey, we need to get this really well-known developer in the space to help us out. And that doesn't always make sense because that person might not be well-known in your community, in your industry. So, there's probably already people who are contributing to your open source project. If you have open source SDKs, find those people who are already active and reach out to them. See what they would want in a community program. They probably have ideas. And then if that's someone who's out there speaking, running meetups, writing content already, have them beta test it for you and get them involved in that initial program that you put together. And then secondly, don't reinvent the wheel. So there are a lot of community programs out there already. So focus on what works well for those other programs and how you're going to differentiate your program. So, for a lot of CNCF ambassadors, they're Docker captains, they're code catalysts. And, we actually take a lot of feedback from them on what we can use from those programs into ours. So I have a lot of people come to me and say, hey, I'm a Docker captain. We get to do this. Can we do this for CNCF? And sometimes we say, yes, that totally makes sense. And sometimes, that just won't work for our program for some reason. So we take a lot of feedback. And I really believe that as quick as we can, make changes based on what our community is asking for in the program. This is their program. I want to know what they want out of it so we can shape that. And then third, establishing value for being part of the program. So like I said, a lot of these ambassadors overlap in different communities. So how are you differentiating your program from another one? What is an ambassador getting from your program versus being in another program? And, these developers are dedicating spare time. This is not stuff they're getting paid for. This is usually not work hours. This is weekend hours and after work. So what makes it worthwhile for them to be part of that community? And I'll talk about this a little bit later as well, and you'll hear me kind of describe my job a lot like this, is I believe it's more about facilitating the community. This community kind of already exists out there. But how can we bring this all under and create an umbrella and make it easier and help these people grow as community leaders? All right, so I've talked pretty high level about the goals and steps that we think about when going into building a community. So I want to talk to you about how we actually manage the program for CNCF ambassadors specifically. So the first is our application process. And how we think about this is whatever is the lowest barrier to entry here. So you might not have the time and the resources to build some really fancy infrastructure for your application process. So we just use a really basic Google form. So we ask, what's your affiliation in the community? Are you working for one of our member companies or one of our projects? Why do you want to be a CNCF ambassador? And how are you already active in the community? And then we do monthly review sessions. And I think here, so one thing that we do is we accept a certain number of people per month. And that's because depending on your budget, the resources, the time you have to dedicate to it, maybe you can sustain a 500-person program, maybe you can sustain a 50-person program. Whatever, that's great. Just set that expectation so that every month your community knows what to expect, how many applications are going to be accepted. So for us, we accept 2 to 3 new ambassadors each month. And I know this isn't how a lot of programs work. I don't know if either of you want to speak to how often you do your acceptance.
The Docker captains accept probably once a quarter, and the number is variable depending on what recommendations and who we've evaluated at that point.
Yeah, so we did a yearly growth run last year. So we do it by year, and that also meant that we could spend more time ramping everyone up, making sure that everyone was comfortable within the program. Yeah, so that's how we dealt with it.
Awesome, thanks. So what we have in mind who those 2 to 3 new people are, next is the onboarding process. So for the people who don't accept, we either defer the remainder of the applications or reject. And then we send this really long, detailed welcome email to our new ambassadors. So we invite them to a monthly onboarding meeting that we host. We give them a swag credit to our CNCF store so they can get stuff for themselves and their meetup. We add them to our private Slack channel. And then we tell them how they can do monthly meetup reimbursement. So we actually pay a certain amount of money for our ambassadors' meetups each month for swag, food, all that kind of stuff. And so in these monthly ambassador meetings that we host, we tell them about new stuff with CNCF so that they are educated in what they're speaking about when they're going out to meetups and events and talking about us. We educate them on kind of new opportunities for them, so how they can get involved in CNCF, if there's new blogging opportunities, webinars, stuff like that. And then we also really want to try and find ways for them to connect with each other. So that was the feedback in one of our first meetings, was that, hey, this is really great. We love getting updates on CNCF to know what's going on, but we really want to knowledge share and learn from each other. How can we do that? So one thing we added is a face-to-face at all of our Cloud Native Con and KubeCon events. So we actually bring all of our ambassadors face-to-face in either a happy hour or a breakfast, something like that, where they can mingle, talk about stuff, what's working well in their meetups, what's not, who are some great speakers they could invite, all of that. And then similarly, the private Slack channel is a place for that. It's almost kind of the water cooler talk, where you can just talk about what your upcoming meetup is, what stuff you're participating in, get advice, just knowledge share with your peers and learn from each other. And then for this final point, what I call special perks. So like I said, we're not paying these people for their time. This is something that they're doing to help us generate awareness, because they're really passionate about this community. So, how can we make them know that we appreciate them, feel special about what they're doing? So we do a couple of things. We did ambassador vests at the last KubeCon, so they're just vests with the ambassador logo on them so that you can identify a community resource out and about when you're at KubeCon, and just recognize them for their contributions. We do front row keynote seating, which was actually something they asked for based on what Docker Captains does. So we do front row keynote seating at all of our events. Like I said, these face-to-face meetups. And, these are happy hours, breakfast, kind of a little bit more of a VIP experience. Free access to our certification exams. So we have a certified Kubernetes administrator and a certified Kubernetes application developer exam that we're about to release. So we allow them to take this at no cost to them. And then finally, like I said, that meetup reimbursement. We also pay for meetup fees, so we have a Meetup Pro account. So any CNCF ambassadors, meetups that fall under that, their meetup fees are also taken care under that. And I'm sure that this list is going to continue to grow. We're always looking for new ways to recognize our ambassadors. And these are, just some of the tangible perks of the program. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Jenny to talk about the Docker Captains program.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to cover the Docker Captains program, go into traits of a captain and how I manage the program, and then kind of take a step back and share what I think is foundational to any ambassador program that you would want to build, and kind of my 5 transferable takeaways based on managing the captains these last few years. So first, the Captains Program launched in April of 2016. We have around 60 captains across 23 countries. Captains are Docker experts. They're leaders in their communities, organizations, ecosystems, and they're huge advocates. They're committed to sharing and teaching any chance they get, and they constantly surprise me with their enthusiasm and willingness to sign up for all the extracurricular activities. What kind of things do captains get in return for being a part of the program? We have ongoing training we provide, private briefings, webinars, private Slack channel. I think you'll hear that over and over. That's critical for real-time communication. But also special perks at in-person events. So DockerCon, captains go to DockerCon. We have, I literally plan out their entire week. We have special activities. We have dinners. We have front row at the keynote, as Kaitlyn mentioned, a number of other things, and of course, swag. Slack and swag are your 2 critical elements to any sort of community. And for captains, we have custom branded captain swag with our captain's name on it, because we are recognizing them as VIPs for their special efforts and their commitment. Okay, so let's see. The traits of a captain, and so this is, I think anytime you're starting an ambassador program, it's really important to identify what that particular program means, and particularly for Docker, because this is not our only program. We have a community leader program. We have other programs to facilitate how our community wants to get involved. Captains specifically are our practitioners, and they're very public about sharing their knowledge. One of the things that stood out over my time as a captain managing the captains, is that they are also innovators and creators. So yes, we absolutely give them content that they can go deliver, but they create their own content. And they share it with each other. So, hey, I'm speaking here. Does anyone have security slides on the latest update? I can go ask our team, but I know that a captain already has one because they've already given that presentation because they were so excited about it. And captains are innovators. They've created some amazing projects to help the Docker community. Play with Docker, which is the online Docker playground that lets you get started right away, came from captains. OpenFast came from Captain Alex Ellis through our work at various in-person events. They're also influencers, and then I think one other thing, developer marketing, we all know you have to be credible. So you have to give your captains the space to give you feedback. Captains are absolutely the first ones to tell me or our product team when something's not right. And I can tell you everyone appreciates that. So from a very specific management perspective, I'm the program manager, but I have a lot of help across many people at Docker. And some of the tools that we use Zoom for calls. We have a public and private GitHub repo. The private is for all of our assets for captains, but the public is so that everyone can see who's a captain and promote the projects that they're working on. Google Forms, obviously. Slack, like I said, and we use a tool called Mobilize. I really only use that for email, so, but my recommendation is to be all the places. Not everyone's going to be in Slack, so make sure that important communications are sent out, not only on your Slack channel, but email, and there's a record of them. Maybe it's on your GitHub page or wherever it is, but make sure that you have multiple ways to reach everyone. One, because not everyone has the same preferences. Two, because if we're represented in 23 countries, time zones are all different. Our captains all can't make the calls or do other things. And then the other thing is a combination of virtual and live events. Kaitlyn was talking about this. It's extremely important to have events where your ambassadors have time face-to-face to build on the virtual relationships that they've already made. And bonus points if you put their Twitter handle or their Slack handle on the name tag, because that's how people are going to recognize each other when they first meet. Let's see. So some of the other things that we do from a management perspective is, if your goal is for your ambassadors to share your product knowledge, then give them an opportunity to do so. So one of the things that we started was Captain's Office Hours. And so we host office hours monthly where the Docker community can join and ask captains any questions. This is great because captains love sharing what they're knowledgeable about. I'm good at planning stuff, so I can take care of the Zoom link and publicize it through Docker. And the community gets great answers to their questions in a real manner. Other types of things that we do, we also got the feedback that captains want the opportunity to talk to each other and not just to Docker. And so I host captains roundtables where literally we get on a call and we all talk to each other. And everyone in Europe is drinking wine while we're drinking coffee over here. And but it's a good time, and it maintains the friendships and the relationships that have been built. So I asked the captains to give me some quotes that I could share, and then kind of talk about what that highlights for me. This is actually a picture of an award. So not only do we recognize the efforts of captains, but the captains recognize the efforts of people, myself, of course, but people outside of whose direct responsibility it is to be in the captain's management, and gives them an award at DockerCon. So last time at DockerCon Austin, we gave these huge buoys, and it caused quite a commotion for everyone who received one going back on the airplane. But they are proudly displayed around the office at Docker. All right, so here's one of the captains, Brett Fisher. He's a Udemy instructor on Docker, and his quote really stuck out to me because it speaks to the needs of the community, right? Containers, Docker, everything is changing so fast. The community wants some direction. By having this ambassador program, we are able to scale our efforts tremendously. Like, Docker can't speak at every conference it gets asked to speak at. But with captains, we can cover way more ground and cover way more places around the world. This is Laura. Her quote I love because it highlights the importance of relationships, not only the relationships that she's built at Docker, but the relationships with other captains. And as I mentioned, I think that has been one of the biggest learning experiences for me as a manager, is that the relationships with each other are just as, if not more important. And the reason is because everyone in the group has a similar passion, and they love sharing it. And if you create the space for them to do that, like, amazing things can happen. All right, and the third quote is a live quote.
All right, I can do that.
From our captain in the room.
The Docker Captains Program has meant a lot to me, both visibility as a Docker expert and a Docker mentor and a Docker speaker, but also gaining all those relationships within that Docker community, both with Docker employees, Docker captains, real relationships. I would consider many of them my friends. That has meant a ton to me, and yeah, it's a fantastic program, and I'm super happy to be a part of it.
We're very happy to have you. Thank you. Good job, Jonas. Have
Thank
to get
you.
him back. He puts me on the spot all the time. Okay, so now stepping back, I talked about some specifics about the Captains Program, like what are my takeaways in terms of the foundations of an ambassador program. One, I think this is the most obvious, you're providing tools and creating opportunities for learning. This is you providing content to your ambassadors. This is sharing extra knowledge, taking the extra time to build up a group of experts. Two is the meaningful connections. This really speaks to providing the space for your ambassadors to connect with each other and build their own relationships, because you can't be everywhere all the time, nor do you want to be. And I know that with the captains, many of these relationships will live way beyond the program, both with myself and with each other. And then recognition. Any ambassador program, this is a group of very important people, and you need to recognize them. And so constantly think of new ways to recognize their efforts, and do that both to them and internally at your company, right? You need to promote what your ambassadors and what your community is doing. All right, so, and now my top 5 takeaways. Ambassador programs are very popular right now, and I think that's because they work. But if someone at your company is coming to you saying, we need an ambassador program, don't start a program unless you have the perfect person in your community already, because it's just not authentic. You should look in your community, see people that are going above and beyond and want to create something around them to nurture and enrich what they're already doing. And then do take chances. So I went through all the traits of a captain. Are those the traits we started with? No. It's absolutely something that's evolved over time, because captains have taught me a lot and done way more than I think our expectations were from the get-go. And as you kind of identify what you want, there will be some people that don't fit in, and they will make fantastic ambassadors. So don't be afraid to take chances, but communicate expectations, because if someone's not working, then they shouldn't be in the program, right? You have to have those expectations up front. Provide value to your ambassadors, and they will provide value to you. Like I said, that's I think for me that's the three tenets of learning, community, and recognition. The fourth one is don't be the gatekeeper of your company to your ambassadors. You want as many people at your company to interact with the ambassadors and build their own relationships as possible. Like, obviously I'm going on maternity leave. Am I terrified that my program is going to sink while I'm gone? No, there are so many people at Docker that interact with our captains all the time. I know that they will have answers to their questions. Things will continue. Everything will be fine until I get back. And then the last thing, create the space for amazing things to happen. I used to plan agendas and do a lot more and make sure things were covered, and then I realized that just having a bunch of really smart, passionate people in the same room, things that aren't planned or will happen, and it's better than what was planned. So definitely take advantage of when you have more than one ambassador in the same place. All right, and now I'm going to hand it over. Oh, all right, my bonus takeaway. If you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. Make sure your program has a ton of opportunities for fun. Like I said, when you have a group of adults sharing a similar passion, it equals adult friendships, and it's been a great experience.
Awesome. Thank you, Jenny. All right. So I'm going to talk a little about the code team and the code community that I've been involved with for the past 3.5 years. For those who don't know, the code team was an open source initiative within Dell Technologies, started out at EMC to essentially make sure that we had an open source program that drove open source interactions from the organization out to the open source community, and also making sure that the open source community were aware of everything that we were doing within the open source space. So that's the why. The code team started as a very, very tiny team in August of 2014. Just a few months before, I was approached by Brian Gracely, who's now at Red Hat, where he asked me, do you want to be a part of something special? Do you want to be a part of something exciting? We're going to start an open source initiative. And I said, yes, absolutely. That sounds fantastic. I would love to be a part of that. So we kicked it off in August 2014, and we had 3 main principles for the team and everything that we did. Making sure that open source efforts are developed in the best interest of the community. We wanted to make sure that everything that we did, everything that we open sourced, was made in the best interest of the community. And we find this really, really important, so important that we put this as our #1 principle. Our second principle was that projects that we were involved with, projects that we were open sourcing, should be executed with complete transparency and openness, making sure that everyone knew the entire roadmap, everyone was involved in discussions. We had multiple public spaces where that conversation could be held, both on GitHub, on Slack, and others. Our third main principle was to make sure that all the open source technologies that we created and we were a part of were made to be consumable by the widest range of users and organizations. We didn't want it to be tied to just one specific technology. We wanted them to be used pretty much everywhere by everyone and deployable everywhere, essentially. So within the code team, we had three main code community programs. The Code Community, the Dev High 5 program, and the Code Catalyst program. And we're going to dive deeper into each and every single one of these so you can understand a little about what made them different as well. The Code Community was our main Slack community, our main communication channel out to the larger code community, where when we wanted to reach out to them, make sure that they were aware of new product updates or when we were hosting events, or maybe if we gave away swag, or maybe if we had a coupon for an awesome conference. We wanted to make sure that we shared this with the entire community. The code community launched in June of 2015, but we actually started it a little earlier than that. About 6 months before that, we had a separate single channel for our very, very tiny code community at that time. We were roughly 30 people within that single channel, and we realized that there were a lot of different conversations going on within that single channel. We want to make sure that we can have those discussions properly and out in the open. So we looked at this and we said, we're using Slack internally, let's also try out Slack for a large community. And it actually worked. So in June 2015, we opened the doors for the code community and we sent out invites to the roughly 30 people that we already knew of that wanted to be a part of this. The next day, I set up a simple website. If you ever used Slackin to manage Slack invitations, it's a great tool. So I set that up to make sure that anyone could join. And it was easy as well, because then we could just point them to one single website that they could share with everyone else so they could also be a part of the conversation. Not just so I was the gatekeeper, but rather everyone could join. After about a month, we were roughly 100 people in there. I was ecstatic. We had 100 people in our code community. This is amazing. We never thought we were going to have that many people in there. And then we got 200, and then 300, and all of a sudden we had 1,000 people. We were a little scared. We were wondering what's happening. Is someone using our Slack for illicit purposes? No. We had several business units that actually moved into our Slack team and started developing their open source tools and open source projects within that Slack team. So after a while, we had to move away from the free version of Slack and actually start paying for it, because we only had a scroll back of like 3 days. So it looked like all of our channels were mostly empty because no one had said anything for the past 3 days, and that didn't look good. So we started paying for it, and that opened up for a lot more interactions and integrations within Slack and all the tools that we, the code team, and all the business units and the community members were using. It continued to grow, and just yesterday, or rather today, I just looked right now, we're very, very close to 5,800 members within the code community. So it's been growing at an accelerated rate. It's a really, really cool place where you can have open communications across organizational boundaries. No matter what company you're affiliated with or where you are, we're completely global. Slack had a tiny issue with time zones for a while, so it looked like we had 56 different time zones in there. I don't really know how that happened. But there are tons of different discussions in there, with topics ranging from cloud-native projects, persistent storage in containers, virtual reality, and of course some hardware hacking as well. We had some really amazing drone aficionados in there that were talking about that for a while. Members include developers, project managers, users, recruiters. We have a very active job board channel where a lot of recruiters are, and also people that just share their CV and resume with others so they can actually be picked up by awesome open source companies. One major amazing thing with the code community was that we had direct competitors to our own organization within that code community, sharing their stories, sharing their successes, and sharing their failures with different open source projects. And I thought that really speaks to the nature of the open source community itself. The next program that we had was the Dev High 5 program. The Dev High 5 program was launched actually before the code community itself, but we folded it under that when we launched the code community. It was designed to lead projects from completely unpublished to fully open sourced through a well-established process that we had worked out with corporate marketing and corporate legal during a period of a few months. Before this, it was very, very hard for anyone at the organization to actually open source a project. It took a long while, and the process wasn't that easy. So we made it easy. And we also made it possible to get proper recognition for that hard work that the individuals had done or the business units had done to actually create all these amazing projects. We gave them guidance on how to structure the project, looking at different naming, making sure that the project name didn't clash with another already existing open source project name, because you don't want that. You don't want that, that to happen. We wanted to make sure that they had proper documentation, not just what it was, but why they had created this, and how to properly utilize it, and how to contribute back to it. Of course, licensing is always important within the open source space, so we made sure that there were licenses applied, and we also helped them with logos. So you see, most of these logos here, we helped them with, because we feel that the graphic design of a proper logo for a project is really, really important. And I'm sure you can all agree here when you see all the stickers that are available and all the stickers that are on the laptops, having a proper logo for a project is really important to make sure that you can market it properly. Through this program, we shepherded more than 100 different open source projects throughout the past a little over 3 years. So I was very, very excited for this, and it's been a huge success. Then when we look at the Ambassadors program, as we've been talking about here earlier, we ran a program called the Code Catalyst program. We launched this in December of 2016. Before that, we had a little beta program for the early members as well. We started planning this months before as well to make sure that it was actually good, solid strategy and a good, solid program. And we brought together a lot of prominent open source members across the globe. We had 38 members from 26 different organizations, 2 independent out of those 26. And from 10 different countries, so US, UK, Spain, Germany, Italy, India, Australia, and so on. The Code Catalyst program was designed to promote the work of the Code Catalyst members, not necessarily work that were aligned to what we were doing exactly, but work that we found were really important within the open source community. They were great developers. They are great developers. They are great speakers, great bloggers, and great influencers of a lot of open source projects that are out in the open source community. So with this, we established an ecosystem of just a great group of creative individuals who really pushed open source forward and advanced the open source space. The common goal of these Code Catalysts and the Catalyst program was to bring out the best out of the open source community, making sure that the individuals themselves were promoted for the work that they'd done, both the open source contributions that they had done, the speaking engagement that they were doing, the blog posts they were writing, the videos they had created, the interviews that they had participated in. Everything that they did, we wanted to make sure that the entire world knew about it. So we wanted to make sure that everyone knew what all of these amazing people were up to and what they were passionate about. So one way we actually did this was we ran a social media campaign called the Code Catalyst Spotlights. You can see my face all over here, but I'm not important here. The important ones are the Code Catalysts. Through the Code Catalyst Spotlights, I interviewed them on how they got started within the open source community, what projects they're working on currently, what drives them, what they're passionate about. It might not be the open source project. They might be passionate about something else. They might be passionate about helping to build communities or helping to advocate for open source projects. And also, I wanted to hear what their vision was for the future of the open source space. I wanted to hear what they were excited about, things that they were looking forward to within the next 2 years. So this was a lot of fun. These are all up on YouTube, so if you want to check these out, just Google Code Catalyst Spotlights, and you can hear from all of these amazing individuals here. We also ran code webinars. There we go. We also ran code webinars, so again, Code Catalysts were presenting their projects, presenting stuff that they were working on, and this was a huge success as well. Based on the we used a different platform. You talked about Zoom before. We used a platform called Crowdcast, which was really cool. They have a green room functionality where you can talk with the speaker and everything before you actually go live, make sure that their slides are up and everything. It's pretty cool. Automatically records into MP4 so you can easily upload to YouTube as well. This is not an ad for Crowdcast, but just saying, it was cool. This was this was a lot of fun, and we also got some great analytics out of this. We saw that our audience for these webinars were not just here in North America. No, they were global. So we could see that we got a huge crowd of webinar goers in Bangalore and in Australia and Southeast Asia and in Central Europe and in the United States. So it was really cool to see that we got all of these people, all of these amazing individuals to join us and actually watch this webinar and be a part of it. The last thing that we did, again, a little fun picture here, was something that we call the code assemblies. Of course, it's a pun on code assembly, where we gathered all of these phenomenal individuals, all of these code catalysts and other phenomenal open source individuals that we were meeting up at events. So you can see a few here from around the globe. This is from Prague, this is LA, Open Source Summit. Here's Copenhagen, sorry, and up there is Austin as well. So we wanted to make sure that we had a way where we could meet face to face, and not just in a conference room, but face to face off the conference campus. Somewhere we could just chat person to person and get a real relationship going, not just as colleagues, but actually as friends. So this was a lot of fun. We really, really enjoyed this as well, and it's been a blast. All right. Do we have any closing thoughts before we go into the Q&A? Nope? All right.
No thoughts.
I'll start. When looking at Ambassadors program and building out open source communities, it's really important that you do plan before you start anything. Make sure you don't just go in and do tactical stuff, but actually build out a strategy before you do anything. It's really, really important to make sure that you have everything laid out, planned out, and that you have deadlines that you actually follow. Otherwise, it's not going to go well. So that's my closing thought.
And then I would say don't be afraid to iterate on that. So you're going to roll things out, and then you're going to get feedback. And like Kaitlyn said, the sooner you can make that change, the better. I think other things you heard all of us speak about, the importance of live and virtual connection and swag and Slack.
Yes, swag is very, very important.
Very important.
Yes,
Everyone knows that here.
Definitely,
though, so.
Definitely. As much as possible and as much as you can possibly get.
Yeah, and I think something else you heard us all say was, it's about creating a space for the community to grow, and let that happen naturally as much as you can. If you try and force it to go in a direction it's just not going to go, you're making your job harder and you're not helping the community. So I think that's something we all kind of touched on as well.
Awesome. So if you want to get more information about the Ambassadors program that we have talked about here today, head over to these URLs so you can read more about the Cloud Native Ambassador program, the Docker captains, and the code community. With that, let's open it up for Q&A. Yes, you can. You want to stand up? I'll move over here.
So I've heard you guys say, talk about proprietary tool Slack quite a bit, and you guys are also part of the international community. I'm wondering if choosing Slack at all has hindered your ability to communicate in places where Slack isn't available, like China and other countries. Has that slowed down development in those countries at all? And if so, what are you guys looking at for alternatives?
Yes, so definitely if so Slack is not available in every country, and Dylan asked what are we looking at for alternatives, or has that slowed down development in those countries? Yes, so if anywhere Slack's not available, it makes it hard, which is why maybe the real-time communication isn't necessarily what happens there, but make sure that you have alternate options for that communication. So that would be the emails, right, with important information like I was talking about, or open calls where captains communicate as well. But I haven't actually looked at any alternatives to Slack.
Yeah, so we have Zoom for our monthly meetings, and that tends to be good for all of our international ambassadors as well. We do have a WeChat channel, not for our ambassadors yet, but we do have one for CNCF that we're using. And then the other thing is we do find Google Forms to be difficult in some countries, so we offer email applications as well.
Yeah, same thing here. We looked at different tools, but since we started using Slack before many of the other tools were readily available, that was the one that we picked. But yeah, there are definitely others that I would like to look more closer into if we got to pick right now. Great question. Thank you.
Oh, I got it.
How important is social media for building communities? Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, etc. Because really dealing with developers actually use these tools, or how important that role is? And LinkedIn.
I think social media is really, really important. You can do social media in many, many different ways. Twitter is a great way to acknowledge people that are on Twitter. Not every developer is on Twitter, but we still want to acknowledge them by full name. So if they have created something special, if we want to promote their project or something like that, we want to make sure that we not just link to the project. We give a brief little overview about what it is, and then of course link to their full name, so they get proper recognition. So when someone Googles their name, that actually shows up as well. And then other ways of social media is through newsletters, for instance, making sure that we give them blog posts and stuff like that. So we promote them that way as well. They don't have to have a LinkedIn account or a Facebook account or a Google Plus account. Is anyone using Google Plus? Or Twitter account for that matter. We still want to promote them, and we want to make sure that their name is out there, definitely.
Yeah, something I do in a lot of times when I include our different community members in newsletters, I mention their name and then link to their either GitHub or Twitter account. I probably talk to our ambassadors almost as much on Twitter as I do on Slack. So those are the two big ones for us.
Yeah, I think it's just where your audience is. We have like I said, a number of people on Slack, on Twitter, and what you're trying to do. If you're trying to recognize, then pick a public forum, whether it's a newsletter or Twitter, wherever you think people will be. And Mary?
Awesome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tony, you actually mentioned that you want to make it as open to as many people in your company to talk to the community members as possible. And that was interesting to me, because I think there's a lot of us in the community developer relations realm that kind of are hesitant to let marketing and sales and other departments talk to our people, right? Because we don't want to ruin those relationships. So how do you do that? How do you balance that?
So I sit in marketing, so that's a natural relationship for other people on my team to meet with or talk with captains. I think honestly, there has been value shown by the captains both ways that I actually don't have to tell someone they need to go answer a question of a captain or do something. Like, they want to, because the captains are engaged. They're passionate about Docker. They have positive things to say, and when they don't have something positive to say, like, there's a reason. And people really appreciate that kind of feedback to grow and be better. Yeah, I think it's just really captains have shown their value, and the Docker team has shown their value, and also that they know each other, right? So they've met each other at DockerCons. They've seen the awesome work that captains have done, and there's a mutual respect.
One of the things that I really like about getting your revelation of don't try to force something that isn't really there, you know, let the team develop naturally. What would you, I'm curious to hear from all of you, what have you seen as the most, still remains the most difficult thing with building up the team? And even through all those iterations, what still remains the hardest?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's that initial phase of getting people involved. And as Jenny spoke to, you know, don't start a program if you don't have the perfect ambassador in front of you already, because it's really hard to get people involved who just, you're forcing it and they're not interested. And then secondly, letting them know that opportunities are available to them and having that constant line of communication. I always find that to be where, you know, if we're not engaging them often enough, you know, that kind of stagnates the growth of the community as well.
Yeah, I think going back to that and looking at when you're starting out and you want to get engagement from the community ambassadors, I think it's really important that you're being very public with what you want as well. So making sure that they are aware of what's expected of them and also what we can help them with. Making sure that there are no hidden agendas or anything like that, because, yeah, I think that's really important. Yes?
These selective ambassador programs that we're applying to come through, particularly where the topics kind of overlap, do you find it's the same group that make up the Docker captain and the ambassador? I mean, is it always the same people, or do you have a lot of unique faces that show up? And if it's the same, is that a problem? That it's just different, the same group of people always talking differently?
There's definitely overlap. So because a lot of our technologies are similar or overlap in some sense, it is some of the same people. But there's a lot of diversity in between the groups. There's there's Docker captains that I don't know. There's code catalysts that I don't know. There's just, you know, it's a big community, so there's always going to be some overlap, but it's not as much as I think you would expect, maybe.
That really brings up a good question, which is, do you actively work on diversifying your community and finding new faces and new voices?
Yeah, I can definitely speak to that. So the question is, do we actively work on diversifying the community? And yes, definitely. That was one of the core concepts of the community. We wanted to make sure that everyone was represented as much as possible, and making sure that we didn't just pick amazing speakers or just amazing bloggers. We wanted a wide variety of people that contribute in many, many different ways, and also in many different regions. You don't want an ambassador program that's just based in LA. You don't want an ambassador program just based in Berlin. You want an ambassador program that's spread out so they can actually cover more ground, and also because it gets more interesting, because you get more feedback through them from the entire world. What works for them, what works for their community and for the organizations that they're involved in. So that was definitely one of the core concepts of the Code Catalyst program. Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
sorry. Yeah. No. Go ahead.
So with like tools like Slack and things like that, it's really good to have like that real-time communication piece. But I imagine as you guys as the program grew, I was wondering if you guys had any issues with like over-communication and like trying to manage that, because I think it's going to get hairy really fast.
Yeah.
Well, and like maybe like you guys have a way to manage that, like mitigate that?
Yeah, so the question is, how do you deal with over-communication? Slack, stuff like that might get very noisy.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that we actually get the message out. The way we did that, we essentially copied the Docker Captains program here. We utilized a tool called Mobilize, where we announced things. And then the discussions were mostly in Slack, and there could be a bunch of different things, and then we could summarize that, if needed, into Mobilize, so we could send that out. Or we invite to an event, making sure that that's in Mobilize, so they get a proper event invite, instead of just announcing it in Slack. We do that as well, to make sure that everyone's aware that there's a new message waiting for them. But yeah, we utilize Mobilize for that, and that was a great platform for us.
That will help, for sure.
And done, yeah, easy.
Do you have anyone in your community that, like, I'm not technical, so I'm not contributing to a project, but I definitely can organize and help mobilize people. If you don't have a dedicated person, maybe there is someone with those skills. Like Docker, for example, has community leaders which do meetups. They're not expected to be the ones speaking publicly or contributing to projects, but there is a program for those unique skills. So I would say maybe rely on your community to help you build something if you have someone like that. On the budget side, I would try to find money to recognize those, but there's other ways that you can recognize people and do that as publicly and as often and genuinely as possible. I mean, honestly, write a handwritten thank you note.
Yeah, no, yeah. Yes?
Do you have any tips on getting that first community input into your project? An example being, I'm at Netflix. We have a lot of fun open source projects. I get a lot of good community feedback on things and a lot of awesome ideas on what we should do to our project, but sometimes struggle with getting that first community involvement, that first PR from someone outside, and we don't have an ambassador program here. So I don't think it'd be forced starting one, but just interested if you have any insight into how to get that first, instead of just someone throwing the idea at you, throwing PR at you.
So one way that we facilitated that within the code community was that we encouraged people to share their projects with the larger code community. So when you share a project in there, you share it with close to 6,000 people that would then look at your project, and if it's of interest to them, then they might work with you. But yeah, it's very hard to pinpoint and say, I want you to help out. So essentially overshare and say, hey, I built this really cool thing. Does anyone want to take a look at it? I have no idea what I'm doing. I might have been doing everything wrong. Is this of interest? So being just honest and say, hey, I'm looking for feedback, and share that out in as many ways as possible. Share that with friends, family, share it on Facebook, Twitter, yeah, and in Slack communities, I think is good.
In this case, we've talked about it at multiple conferences.
Yeah.
A lot of people are using it. A lot of people have ideas on, oh, we'd love to see this. I think they just hope that we go build it. Saying like we hope they would build it for us, or for the community rather. But
having a communication channel that's not just GitHub issues and pull requests is a good way to get feedback as well. Because it might just be that they have a question that might lead to feedback that might lead to a feature request. But they don't have that feature request in their head yet, so they won't create an issue. So having a channel like Gitter or Slack or Rocket Chat or something like that for the project where they can ask questions, I think is a good way to go.
And then maybe even following up. I don't know if after they get the idea, there's
Mike.
follow-up, right? Because everyone gets busy, but if you show some initiative in kind of keeping up with them or seeing what they're doing and what they're working on and find a way to integrate it, that might help them be more motivated.
All right, awesome. Any more questions? Yes.
How do you handle with ambassadors
Yes, so setting the program expectations up front, so captains do require activity, and guess what? Things change, jobs change, sometimes people can't be active, and I've been able to have adult conversations with those that are no longer active, and they understand or self-remove that, hey, I realize I don't have time for what this program requires. So, and I think setting that up front and being real about it really helps.
Yeah, same here. I had discussions with the Code Catalyst that kind of fell off as well. And I asked them, how are you doing? Is there anything I can help you with? Do you need topics for a blog or something like that? And they said, no, right now I'm just really busy at work, but I'll be back in October. I'm like, okay, cool. Just so I know, but I want to make sure that I'm aware. Yeah, we didn't kick anyone out. But yeah, and then of course you have individuals that are moving away completely, maybe from a certain technology, or moving away from open source completely. And then I think it's fine to have something like an alumni program. Thank you so much for your contributions. You are now an alumni, and we'll focus on the contributions of the active members. All right. All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming. It's been a blast.